Hi, Douglas Long and Sunny Navaratnam again. This time we were thinking to talk about performance. Douglas has got some really interesting ideas about performance. Douglas.
Thank you. Performance is the bottom line in absolutely every area of life. And I think sometimes we forget that in the leadership arena. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking about a family, a business, a society, a country, or wherever else. Performance is what it's all about. And we can define those performance in qualitative or quantitative terms. We can look at particular time frames. But what we're looking for all the time is people to achieve desired results, whether it's in ourselves or other people. And a lot of leadership material around about simply considers the role of an individual in obtaining performance. So they talk in terms of a person's competence, those things that they are able to do, their ability, if you like, or they talk in terms of, they talk in terms of their willingness, their confidence, their motivation to do it. And that's where a lot of the leadership material concentrates and stops. But performance requires attention to a whole lot more details. As an example, you can have a situation where a person is really enthusiastic and committed to performing, but because the structure of the organisation doesn't ensure that the right equipment is available at the right time and in the right place, that person can't achieve desired results. And it's a leadership function to make sure that people have got the right equipment, the right materials, when they need them and where they need them. Now, I know that lots of people say, oh, well, this is a management function, but I think that the days are gone when we can have this distinction between management and leadership. I think that they're now merged into one, that we need to have people who have got the ability to deal with all sorts of complex areas, not just the one-on-one interaction or the one-on small group interaction of the leaders and the followers.
Absolutely, I agree with you. In fact, we were talking about leadership being across the board. It extends to families and countries and communities. Yep. And one of the interesting things to look at is today's families. And there's a completely different structure to families, even compared to 30, 40 years ago. Yeah. Urbanized society, the fact that travel is so easily available, countries inviting people to come from different parts of the world to come and work and live, means that the family structures have completely transformed in these years. And I think in there, leadership becomes such a critical element. People forget that if for the family to perform effectively as a unit, it requires the members of the family to function just like you would function in an organization. You want the right culture, you want the right environment being created for all of them. You need the right tools, the right situation. Everything being engineered and made sure that the family is functioning at its optimum level. And that is one of the things that's really interesting, because if you look at that, the function of making sure that happens is kind of like management and leadership combined. And so, like, I agree with you, there's no real definition or separation today. In organizations itself, I see that happening all the time. People, in fact, there's an interesting discussion going on in one of the groups that I'm attached to on LinkedIn, where they're trying to define the difference between leadership and management. And people are finding it increasingly difficult to do that.
Yes.
20 years ago, you could write a line here and say leader, manager, and you'd have completely different lists in there and say, oh, that kind of works. But it's all not happening that way now. Flat organization structures means you've got to be leader and manager. You've got to be the combination of both things. So that's really important. And absolutely right, performance has to happen. Someone has to ensure that all of the needs that support a great performance is present. And it includes environment, culture, policies and processes, procedures, things that are there in the right times, the right places, etc.
Yeah, and that's the point that came through. A few years ago, I wrote a book called Leaders, Diamonds or Cubic Zirconia. And that was interview with a whole range of leaders across the Asia-Pacific region. And one of the things that came out of that was that The key role of a leader is to create an environment in which other people can be successful. In other words, it's not about controlling other people. It's not about getting compliance with my wishes. It's a case of finding out what are the gaps between what a person is able to do right now and what we need them to do, whether this is individually or a group, and then creating the right environment. So I'm running interference, if you like, if you want to use a football term, I'm running interference with all those things that would stop the person from performing, and I'm setting them up, consciously setting them up for success, rather than letting success being a random end factor.
Aha, it's really interesting, isn't it? We tend to throw the emphasis back on the individual person and say, oh, well, you are responsible for that.
Yeah.
While there is a responsibility in that individual person, we fail to see that it's a leader that's got to actually create the capacity for that person to live up to their potentials. And that is, I think, a fundamental definition of leadership.
Yeah, people want to perform. People want to give us. I have never yet found somebody who didn't want to actually give desired performance. Yet it's the system that invariably stops them. And what do? We blame the individual.
Yes.
When the role of the leader is to create that environment to deal with the systems issues, as Deming said, in order to make it possible for them to achieve results.
So there you are, a quick look at performance and how a leader can really influence that performance. So how is your experience? What is your experience in life? The organization that you work for, is the leaders actually making sure that you are able to perform at your optimum, to your capacity to perform? Or is it something where you're constrained because of the fact that leadership is not present to that needs that you need in order to perform at your best levels? Have a think about it and comment. Let us know your thoughts. We'd love to explore this a lot more. Thank you for watching. We look forward to talking to you soon.